Welcome back to the Steady Anchor podcast. I am Luke, your host, and today is a special celebration episode for 1 year of the Steady Anchor podcast. We're going to be announcing the winners of our giveaway later in the program, so stay tuned for that. But I wanted to go through first off and thank everyone who's been a part of this journey so far. We'll also talk about the background for anyone who is newer listeners and hasn't been listening from the beginning, and discuss our reach for this year. The people who have been contributing to this have been encouraging this. I want to let you know what we've been doing as a podcast and how far the message has been going out. Obviously, I don't want to measure my success by the numbers, but I want this to encourage you as much as it's encouraged me that this message is getting out there. The message of biblical discipleship, encouraging one another to grow in the grace of our Lord Jesus Christ, to always point to Him who is the anchor of our soul, who has gone before us into the veil, making a way for us, our great and steady hope in life, Jesus Christ. So I wanted to thank you, the listener, for all of you who have joined us recently, for all of you who have been with us since the beginning. Obviously, this wouldn't be a podcast without a listener. It would just be a guy stupidly talking to a microphone. But I wanted to say that I appreciate everyone who has been a part of this, has sent in encouragement and congratulations, has pledged their support in many ways. Everyone who has helped me to grow in my ability to communicate and to communicate theological concepts concisely and clearly. Everyone who's helped me to sharpen and focus in my skills and who has encouraged me to continue going deeper. I wanted to thank a lot of people. I think a good place to start is with just friends and family, people who have been supportive from the first, people in my church who have encouraged this, who have spurred me on to this. I've had 2 episodes with my pastor, with my main discipler, and having his support in this and his encouragement has been tremendously helpful. I'd also want to just thank everyone who's been a support and has helped me to grow in this so far, especially guys like Tony from Reformed Brotherhood, who has graciously allowed me into the Society of Reformed Podcasters, which we'll talk again about later in the episode. So I just wanted to quickly recap what we've gone through this whole year. So I'm recording this on August the 8th. This will post tomorrow, the Sunday of 2020. And this podcast posted its first episode on August 7th, 2019. Now, at the time, I was working at my college for the summer, and it was a job where you would work a 40-hour week and you listen to music or whatever, just a cleaning, sanitation job, basically. And so I was filling my head with hours and hours of podcasts and sermons and lectures and whatever I could find, because I feel the calling of God in my life, the gifting, the passion for pastoral ministry. It is my goal in life is to help others see Christ the way that I see Him, to see Him beautifully and gloriously, to see Him reflected in the truth of His Word. It is my passion to help people understand the deeper things of the faith. And even as I personally am growing in my understanding of theology, of Scripture, of Christianity, to know God and love Him better, I want to be sharing that with other people. I wanted to be contributing back to this conversation that was so beneficial and encouraging to me. I wanted to start a podcast for the people who were not engaged with the type of stuff that I was listening to, because I listened to just about everything, from all the way from the most basic introductory level Christian material to the high seminary lecture type stuff. And as much as I love all of that, I wanted to build kind of an in-between spot where I could help people who were newer in their faith and less studied. They haven't read as many books by old dead guys as I have, and help them grow deeper, to get into these deeper, older, more rich resources that I have been discovering and loving. So I want to thank the people who encouraged me from the start. Different internet friends who encouraged this, different people on social media. At the beginning, I talked a lot with Brad from Theology Nights, who was very encouraging and helpful for me starting the podcast. And I hear he's starting to do episodes again soon, so I'm encouraged to see whether that comes out. Also, the guys from Daily Reformation, Jason, who I was on his show, and he's been encouragement through Instagram, those kind of guys. Nick from Christ is the Cure, his encouragement, his advice. talking to the guys from Undying Light, which is now 2 podcasts, Undying Light and Peals of Thunder. Alex and Paul, they were very encouraging me. I was on their show as well, and I've just enjoyed all the interactions that I've had with these guys, despite maybe disagreements in practice or theology or just the way that we do things. It's still great fellowship, I think, and I've enjoyed, even though we don't discuss much, don't talk as much as we used to. I still appreciate their voice in the conversation and in the Christian sphere as a whole. I also want to thank the people of the Society for Reformed Podcasters. That's the group that I've been really most active in lately since we joined a couple months back, the society, working with the people from Shieldwall. Ethan, who I had the pleasure of meeting in person from Shieldwall podcast, and through that meeting Tony from Reformed Brotherhood, getting introduced and even eventually added into the Society of Reformed Podcasters, which has opened tons of doors. I count it as an honor and a pleasure to be counted among such great podcasts, such ones that are entertaining, that are full of solid biblical gospel content, that have spent in the case of Reformed Brotherhood, have spent hundreds of episodes. I think they're just over 200 now, of just discussing the things of God in the church, how to live more faithfully as disciples, to go deeper into loving one another in the brotherhood. So the encouragement that I've had from those interactions, those cooperations, and also just all of the positive messages and feedback that I've gotten from people through social media. So many people who have been tremendously encouraging and helpful and clarifying, helping me to say things better. I know that I'm not the most excellent communicator, and that's part of why I started this podcast. I wanted to sharpen my abilities as a communicator to help not only to express and communicate to you, the listener, the things that I have been learning and growing in, but also to be encouraged myself, to go deeper, to get stronger at this, to get better at it, so that I can continue serving the church better through this podcast and eventually through my ministry in my church. So that's been kind of the story of this last year. I have been so blown away by the positive feedback and from the reach of this podcast. If you go through the feed on my statistics for the podcast hosting, I can find the data where it tells me that people have listened to the Steady Anchor podcast over 20,000 times in the last year. We have over 20,000 plays, and that is a humbling and a joyful reality for me to know that this message is getting out. That it's also a little intimidating knowing that there are better and bigger, more established podcasts that people could be listening to, and yet so many people have taken their time to go and to listen to me. So it's humbling and encouraging me, and it makes me want to continue going deeper and building and growing stronger, and to continue producing more God-glorifying content to build up the Church of Christ, because that's what I'm here for. I'm here to continually be encouraging you, the listener, pointing you towards greater and better resources, to always going deeper in your faith, to encourage you and spur you on, to always be speaking a word that is fit for the moment, to encourage the body, to build one another up. That's my goal here. Always will be. So we've had those over 20,000 plays in 44 different countries. We've had 18,000 in the United States, and then others in Canada and Australia, the UK, Ireland, Puerto Rico, Bosnia, Spain, Brazil, Indonesia, Russia, New Zealand, Singapore, Germany, Japan, and a bunch of other places. And the fact that this podcast has been played all around the world, basically, is another thing that I can say it is only by the grace of God. And only through the generosity of other people who have contributed and kept on encouraging me to push this further and further. I got a text from a brother at my church just earlier this week saying that he appreciated my words in an earlier podcast, and it does get discouraging at times, because to some degree these are just numbers on a screen to me. But to know that it's actually impacting the lives of people that I care about, that it's actually being used by the Lord, my humble offering to encourage his people, is a tremendous blessing to me. Also, we have a YouTube channel, which we post all the videos on. So for people who don't have iTunes or a smartphone or anything. So like when I got into podcasts, when I started listening, right before I started college a few years ago, I didn't have any stuff that I could play podcast on. Podcasts weren't on Spotify yet. I didn't have iTunes. I didn't know anything about different podcatchers. And so I would only listen through iTunes on my laptop, or through YouTube. Different podcasts that are on YouTube. Doctrine and Devotion was the biggest one for me. I ended up listening to over 200 of their episodes just on their YouTube page. So, but on our YouTube, we've had almost over 1,400 plays, which is another tremendous benefit. Almost 100 subscribers and a lot of people who faithfully listen on there. We also have the different interactions on social media, the different places where you can come and join the conversation. For instance, our doctrinal discipleship group on Facebook, which we started just at the beginning of the summer and has now grown to almost 500 members. I'm always encouraged by the stuff that I see posted in there. I try and be very active and posting edifying content in there, asking good questions, stirring up conversation. But there are a lot of good people in there as well who love to talk, who love to encourage and pray for one another. And so I'd encourage you to go look us up, Doctrinal Discipleship on Facebook, and join the conversation there. Also, not only did we have that Facebook group that we started, but also a website, doctrinaldiscipleship.com, which as of this recording has been seen by over 800 people in dozens of countries. It's another thing just to think that this group of guys that I'm working with to produce articles and book reviews and stuff, a lot of it is going to come out with greater numbers and stuff during the school year, now that we're all going to be back together on campus. A lot of these guys I go to college with. So we'll be able to work on this together, to produce it together, to get it up and edited and a lot more streamlined. So there'll be a lot more content on the website from now on. But just to think that itself has gone to such a degree is, it's awesome. It's very encouraging. And not only do we have the podcast and the website and the Facebook group, but also we've been able to have this giveaway to celebrate the 1-year anniversary, the 50th episode this is, of the City Anchor podcast. And that's not counting the bonus bites and the whole series we did through every chapter of Proverbs back in January. We have been able to do this giveaway with 3 main prize winners. And so this is the moment you've all been waiting for, where we actually get to the point of the episode and talk about who won the project. So, not the project, the giveaway. So, the winners of the giveaway, I picked 3 winners. They're at random. There's no bias. It was a number generator based on where in the list the entries were. So I didn't pick these. It's completely randomized, I promise. And so for the number one, let's go 3 up. Let's go 3 up. So the 3rd place winner, who's going to win a Steady Anchor podcast logo sticker and a copy of the London Baptist Confession of Faith in Modern English, and a copy of What is a Healthy Church by Mark Dever, is Nathan Elfara at Nelfara at Instagram. And I actually think that he's a person I've interacted with. I think he's another person who's in that group, our group on Facebook. He works with the Counterculturalist group. It's a group of, I think it's a bunch of students from Boyce College and Southern Seminary who are working together doing a similar thing that we are now. On our side, they're producing website and articles and podcasts and stuff like that. So I'd love to have those guys on at some point too. The 2nd place winner, who is winning all of that stuff, the Baptist Confession, the podcast's logo sticker, the What is a Healthy Church by Dever, but also in addition, the book Note to Self by Joe Thorne. The 2nd place winner is Jason Aarons at jaaron748. And he's another person. I think he also does a podcast and is in our doctrinal discipleship group. He posts a lot in there, a lot of exciting, encouraging stuff. And then to the number 1 spot, I've already alerted him through text because I know this person personally. Like, I go to college with this guy. Now, again, completely randomized. I didn't just choose people that I've seen before. Is at Jacob Levergood on Instagram. Jacob is one of the people I've known since freshman year, and we were joking earlier this week that he's like, man, if I don't win this, I'm unfollowing you. And I was like, what fake fan? But he actually ended up winning the grand prize, which is the Steady Anchor podcast logo sticker, the 1689 Confession, and Joe Thorne's Church trilogy, the heart of the church, the life of the church, the character of the church. So these will be shipped out fairly soon, within the next month. I'll be giving the grand prize to Jacob in person because I'll be seeing him fairly soon. And then the other winners, I'll be contacting them this week and getting their addresses and sending it out. So if you're listening to this and you haven't been contacted by me yet, send me a message on our social media. You can find us at Steady Anchor Pod on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. Or if you're in the group, you probably know me. And so just send me a message. So as we come to a close, I wanted to thank you again for listening to this and my rambles, and even when I don't have too much to say. I am grateful for all the people who have encouraged me so far and who have continued to press me further, who have encouraged me to go further and have challenged me to produce better content. And that primarily is the other members of the Society of Reformed Podcasters. I mean, I've talked about before about how I feel like a small fish in a big pond in this group, because the stuff they're producing, not only are some of them are seminary graduates and pastors in their own right and seminary students now, but just the wealth and breadth and depth of the material that they're producing is astounding. I'm listening and trying to listen to every episode from all of the shows, and I have most of them ticked off already. And so I've already heard all of Bobcast and Distilling Theology and Reformed Pilgrims, Sipping on Theology, and Christ in Context. I've heard all of those, working slowly through Fast God Stuff and Reformed Brotherhood and the new show, Assurance of Pardon. So go and check these guys out. I'm grateful for all of their voices and contribution to the broader theological conversation in the church. I think that while it may be, it seems like a silly thing to some people, this podcast forum where people just listen to other people talk and have conversations about theological ideas and life in the church and just different stories and illustrations that they have. But I personally have grown so much through listening to the conversation and sitting under the teaching of godlier men and wiser men and women in the faith, and just hearing where they come from, hearing their stories, their testimony of grace, how Christ has saved them, hearing what God is doing in their life, what they've learned about him, what they do to serve him, and how I can serve him better and know him better and love him better. So go find on reformpodcast.com, you can find the Bobcast, who they are continuing to work through the works of theologian Herman Bavinck, and Mark from their show, not Mark, sorry. Mark is the one who left, but it's still Caleb and Andrew. Andrew was on just recording with me the other day. And so his episode with me on the Apostles' Creed is going to post just next week. Distilling Theology, always a blast. It's entertaining, it's funny, but it's also great content. It's lively and entertaining always. Fast God Stuff, same thing. It's very high energy, it's very easy to understand in that it's communicated well and simply, but it's always good and encouraging content. And they don't post very often, as much as the other people may, but because they put a lot of work into their episodes, and I respect that about them. Also, the one who started it all, basically, Reformed Brotherhood, Tony and Jesse, and the encouragement I've received from them, and just the learning from their conversation through hundreds of episodes of going through all these different topics. They're just about to finish Reformed Preaching by Joel Beakey, and I'm excited to see what series they get into next. We also have Reformed Pilgrims, they're just diving into the Lord's Prayer, and I'm really looking excited about the next episodes in that series. There's also Sippin' on Theology, Austin, who was on our show just a few weeks ago, I think last week, to talk about the Apostles' Creed and the Holy Catholic Church. I've loved the series that he's been putting out. Also us, the Steady Anchor podcast, of course, and our two new shows, Christ in Context with Kevin, where he's working through different passages of Scripture which are commonly taken out of context. He's going to be starting a series through, I think, Zechariah soon. And that podcast basically spawned out of his cooperating and co-hosting with me. And so that's another thing where I can see tangibly the results of this work, that it's not only helping other people to go deeper and grow themselves, but it's also spawning other podcasts. And we also have Assurance of Pardon, who's new on the network. They're going through a series of unhelpful Christianese phrases, which I've enjoyed a lot. So thanks again to all these people. Go check these people out. Go and find the different people of reference through this and follow their material. There is an abundance of godly men and women who are producing content to God's glory on podcasts and sermon feeds and stuff. And I think it would be unwise of us as Christians who have the access to this material to waste it, to not take advantage of this. So if you have enjoyed this podcast, feel free to share with a friend. Maybe not necessarily this episode because it wasn't the most exciting, but whatever episodes that you have found encouraging, share with a friend, recommend it, because that's how we grow most, through word of mouth recommendation. You can also rate us and review us on iTunes or wherever you listen. You can also support this ministry. It does cost money to house the audio files, and we're working to a way to streamline that to reduce the cost, but you can find us on Patreon, and I want to thank our supporters. Our 3 Patreons, one of them anonymous, and then Caleb and Jason, these people who have been contributing and help us to keep this show going, and looking forward and encouraged by the stuff that they see. So if you've been encouraged, if the Lord is providing for you to the degree where you can be generous, I would be very grateful if you could support us as well. But don't let me bind your conscience. So just in closing, thank you very much again. I know I keep saying it, but I'm so grateful for you, the listener, and I am very looking forward to another year of the Steady Anchor podcast. I love what I've been doing here. I love the conversation. I love the interaction with different people. And it's been helpful and encouraging me in my own life, knowing that it's not just me talking to a wall. It's me talking to human beings, and that God is using this for our good and for his glory. So until next time, love God, love the church, and love your neighbor as yourself. We'll see you around.